All right. Welcome to your first practice using Fusion 360. This software is a CAD software or a computer aided design software. And this one specifically focuses on taking two-dimensional sketches that you draw with a series of lines or circles or squares. You start with those simple shapes and then you put them all together to create a little bit more of a complex shape. And then you could do what's called extruding, which is where you take those 2D sketches and you bring them into 3 dimensions. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're just going to start with a object that consists of 3 kind of rectangular-like shapes. To do this, your very first step when you're starting any sketch is up here in the top left. You'll notice a menu called the Create menu. In here, there's a bunch of different options for turning your blank workspace here into some sort of 3-dimensional object. And what we're going to do is we are going to actually start with this first option here, creating a sketch. Now, if we click on this, you'll notice that 3 planes show up in the workspace. There's one that goes in the X and Y direction. That's this bottom one right here. One that goes in the X and the Z direction, and one that goes in the Y and the Z direction. And what these represent is, if you remember, we talked about an orthographic and isometric kind of sketch. Right now we're looking at it as if this were an isometric view. And this would be your top, this would be your front, and this would be your side view. And you can see that also up here in the top, front, and right side. So for this shape that we see down here, what I want to do is I actually want to start with a top view, okay? Because looking at the top, I can get the most information out of what I'm looking for, and you'll see what I'm talking about in just a second. Okay, so if I'm looking at this and I were to imagine that I'm drawing this view from the orthographic sketch, I would see a couple of rectangles. I would see the square kind of at the top right here, the rectangle kind of like off to the side right here, and then the giant overall shape of the object. Okay, so I'm just going to start with that giant overall shape. So I could come up here. Now my Create menu has changed. Now it shows a bunch of options for creating 2-dimensional shapes, such as lines, rectangles, circles, spline, which is just like a random curvy line, and so on. So what I'm going to start with is just a rectangle. So I can either click on the rectangle, or you'll see there that if I press the R key on my keyboard, that will also work to start drawing a rectangle. Now, a good practice whenever you're using these Fusion 360 shapes is to always start in the origin, which is shown by this little circle with the black and white kind of, it almost looks like a BMW logo. But you want to start there typically whenever you're creating a shape, because it helps keep things what is called constrained, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. So we'll start by just drawing a basic outline of our rectangle. So if we click in the center there and then drag it out, so I clicked once, and then as I move my mouse out, we now see it starts to kind of outline a rectangle. And right now it just shows 2 random dimensions. Right now it's like 36 point something and 44 point something. If we know exactly what dimension we want this rectangle to be, we could go ahead and just type it into these 2 dialog boxes here. So the one that's highlighted, the 36, that's the one that I want to be 50 if I were looking at the shape down there. So if I just type in 50 right there, you'll see that the rectangle instantly jumps to 50. And then if I just press the Tab key on my keyboard, you'll notice that it now jumps to the bottom box, and now that 44.6 is highlighted. And I can change that to be the 55 that I want it to be. So now I have a fully dimensioned out or constrained rectangle. That means that all the information is needed in order to create a fully complete shape. And you could check to see whether or not a sketch is constrained or not by clicking on this little drop-down menu. Okay, right now there's a little lock symbol right next to my sketch 1 showing me that this is constrained. But you'll see in just a second that it's not always going to be constrained. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I am just going to kind of roughly sketch out what I want this top face to look like, where I have my little square kind of right here and this other little side rectangle right here. So I'm just going to start by kind of drawing in the line just really wherever. I'm not going to try to worry too much about the dimensions just yet. I'm just going to kind of roughly estimate the shape of what I want this to look like. Okay, and you'll notice a couple of things here. You'll notice that I kind of have the shape right. However, the lines inside of my shape here are blue, whereas the lines that I drew for that rectangle before are black. And what this means is that any line that is blue is unconstrained. And also, there's going to be a little pencil icon right up here that you want to look out for. If you see this little pencil icon next to your sketches, that means that your sketch is unconstrained and you've got to add in some more dimensions or constraints. So we'll start by just adding some dimensions for this kind of little square shape. Okay, looking at the drawing down there, it looks like this is about 25 in both directions. So if I just click between there and there, I can give it a dimension of 25. And then same thing for the top. Okay, so if I just click the bottom edge and then the top edge of my rectangle, now you'll see I have this number that's this 22.246. And then if I click one more time kind of just off to the side, now I can edit that number to be that 25 that I want. And now you'll see that those lines that we were talking about that were blue are now black, meaning that this is fully constrained. The last one that we have to do is kind of just give this rectangle a dimension from here to here. So if I click on there, you'll see that this is already 30, which is the dimension that I want. And then in order to find the dimension, I see in my picture that it calls for between this edge and this edge to be 5. So what I could do is I could click on this right edge and then this left edge right here, and then you'll see a dimension kind of pops up off to the side in that direction. And if I click once more, I could change that to be 5. And then you'll notice that my sketch is fully constrained and we are all good. So I can go ahead and finish my sketch. Now that I'm looking at it from the top down, I want to kind of start to visualize this in 3D. Okay, and something that helps me to do is put it back in kind of like that isometric looking view when we had it to begin with. So if we come back up here to our little cube that I was talking about, you'll notice that you can change the direction if you click on any side of the cube there, and you can kind of rotate it around almost like you're mixing up a Rubik's Cube and you're kind of looking at which side you want to look at. Okay, but to get it to that regular isometric sketch that you're used to, if you just click on this little home icon right here, click on that and it'll bring you back towards the isometric. Okay, so you'll notice that if I click on home, now it almost looks like the picture that we have down here. We just have to take these shapes and make them three-dimensional. So to do that, I want to use what's called the extrude tool. Now up here in create, you'll see right next to the create a sketch, there is the extrude tool. So you can click on that, or again, you could just press E as it says right down there. You can press E on your keyboard to start extruding. It takes 2D sketches and makes them three-dimensional. So if I start extruding with E, and if I just click on one of those faces that I drew, okay, I'm going to click on the outermost one. I see that's got a dimension of about 10. So I'll go ahead and type in 10, and you'll see that it takes that sketch and it brings it straight up. And then if I press OK, now you'll see I have that part of the shape, but my sketch has gone away, which is not good because now I can't extrude the rest of the shape like I need to. To get that sketch to come back, what I need to do is go back into my little sketch portfolio here, and you'll see there's a little eyeball icon right next to where it says sketch 1. And if I just click on that eyeball, it brings my sketch back so that I can see it and continue extruding. So I'll keep on going. I'll go over to this one now and I'll see, okay, this one goes up by 15. So if I just click extrude again and then bring it up by 15, now you'll see that portion of it comes up. The last thing I need to do is this last one. Now this last one, I've got to kind of look at the shape in a couple of different ways here. I see that that top cube from this ledge to the very top goes up by 25, but that's only measuring from here to the very top of the cube. I need to measure from the floor all the way to the top of the cube when I'm extruding. Okay, so looking at this, I've already extruded this shape up 10, and then I need to go up another 25 after that. So my total extrusion height needs to be 35. And then I'll click OK. And now I can go ahead and hide my sketch, and then we have our completed shape. So that's kind of the very fundamental basics of Fusion 360, where you can draw a two-dimensional sketch and then bring that sketch to 3 dimensions using the extrusion tool.